Welcome back to The Search Bar, the podcast for law firm leaders who want smarter growth without the guesswork. Wine optional. I'm Eric Ritter, founder of Digital Neighbor. After 12 years helping firms scale from the inside out, I'm here to share what actually works. Sharper marketing, stronger systems, and strategies built to grow with you. If you're running a law firm and want more than just the right leads, larger retainers, and more cases closed, you're in the right spot. And if you're ready to put these ideas into work, we have links in the show notes for you to book a free discovery session. No fluff, just a clear path forward. Today's episode is for every attorney who has ever looked at their calendar and thought, there's no way I can get all of this done. Billable hours, business development, admin tasks, hiring, managing staff, and a personal life. The legal profession demands more time than any one person actually has. But what if the problem isn't the hours, but the systems? Today, I have the pleasure of Dr. Sarah Reiff-Hekking, founder of True Focus Coaching and a productivity and time management expert with more than 20 years of experience joining us. She's a trained clinical psychologist and certified coach who helps entrepreneurs, professionals, and executives shift from overwhelmed to in control. Not by squeezing more into the day, but by creating sustainable habits that match your brain and real life. And as always, before we get into it, I asked the guests to bring a wine recommendation since this is the search bar after all, and I am the SEO sommelier. So Dr. Sarah, I heard you had a really special recommendation that you want to pair with today's episode.
I do. So first of all, thanks so much, Eric, for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And I want to preface this by saying I love a good glass of wine, but I also know that sometimes wine is not the best thing to help us be focused and productive. So it is a little treat, often at the end of a day, or after a job well done, or with that fantastic meal. And when I do have wine, I like the Kim Crawford Illuminate line, specifically the Sauvignon Blanc. It is light, it is refreshing, and I loved it the first time I had it, and then I looked at the bottle, and it actually is a little alcohol reduced and calorie reduced. So not only does it taste lovely, but it gives you just a little bit of that relaxation and not quite so much of the heavy alcohol feeling that some of the wines do.
I love that recommendation. So it's almost like, you're still getting the enjoyment of drinking some wine and the flavor and everything, but it's not as overwhelming or heavy. So I have actually not tried the Kim Crawford Illuminate line, but just you recommending it makes me, I'm going to go out and try it now. So thank you so much for that. So it seems like that's a perfect pairing for today's episode.
Enjoy the things that bring pleasure to you and allow you to live your full life. So I love that about that particular wine. And they also do have, I think they have a blush and maybe also a red. I can only recommend the Sauvignon Blanc. I haven't tried the others, but I'm sure they're awesome as well.
Sounds like it. Well, awesome. So I think we're already off to a great start here, Dr. Sarah. So let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty here. In the intro, we heard a lot of attorneys and how they're overwhelmed, and that's really, the audience here for the podcast. And, I can speak for myself. I look at my calendar sometimes I feel overwhelmed, but in the legal profession, that's maximized even beyond that. And, I feel like they're constantly behind, maybe trying to juggle billable hours, business development, and everything else. So my first question for you here to get us started is, what do you recommend for a lawyer in particular who is struggling to get everything in and also have the whole life that they want outside of work, kind of that good old work-life balance?
That's such a great question, Eric, and I work with my clients on this every day. So the first thing is, I don't think about it as a work-life balance because I don't think it's ever really balanced out, right? And I think we all have different needs in terms of how much much we dive into work, how much time we spend at work, and how much time we want to really devote to our personal life and things that we do outside of work. That's a very individualized discussion. So I encourage people to think about it as, what's the work-life blend that you want? And how do you want to put together the puzzle pieces for your life so that you get the whole life that you want? So often when we're talking about work goals and how we run our businesses, we only focus on the business side of things. And, don't get me wrong, that's an important focus. But if we only focus on the business stuff, we only get business stuff. So we want to make sure that when you're thinking about your whole life, that you're thinking about what you want on the professional side and also what you want on the personal side. Because if you don't have goals or targets for both of those parts of your life, and maybe you want to add another piece, a community piece or a spiritual piece, you get to pick the puzzle pieces, but you want to make sure that you have goals in each of those areas so that when you're building the puzzle pieces for your week that add up to the whole life you want, you're thinking about all of those different pieces.
I love that so much, of how much you individualize it when you work with attorneys. Really what I heard out of there, right? You don't have a system of like, hey, this is the perfect way to do it. It's really that individualization, kind of that word. We are on the search bar, right? So we do talk about wine blends and blending things, right? So that really was near and dear to my heart when you said kind of, what is that right blend that you're looking for? That really spoke to me, and I'm sure that will speak to a lot of our listeners as well, is that there's no one size fits all is what I'm hearing there, right? It's, you're setting a goal of what you want and then you work towards that. So that, what I hear sometimes, people are like, just work harder, right? Kind of that mindset. Why do you think that's so common, especially in the legal profession, and why doesn't it work?
Yeah, I think it's common in the legal profession because that's how the industry has typically and traditionally run. I will say there's a whole bunch of lawyers in the younger and middle-aged group now that are in this place where they realize that's not going to work, and they want more of a whole life, work-life blend that works better for them, that doesn't cause them to be burnt out. And I think the industry as a whole has set people up for burnt out unless they really were in a situation where they had the right kind of support at home and outside of work, which not everybody has. The world's not set up for men with wives all the time, right? And lots of people doing law these days are not necessarily men with wives. That old model where that allowed some people to thrive, I think really does a disservice to other folks. So, and then I also think that the thing that happens with lawyers is often they're really smart people, and they went to law school because they're really smart and they were good at succeeding in academics and in law school. And then they have this competition for getting good grades, getting the right sort of awards, so that when they get out of law school, they end up in the right law firms or the bigger law firms, or they have better choices about their career based on how they performed in law school. And then they get to the legal career that they've chosen, and those tools that work to get them through law school and in a good position to start their career don't necessarily always transfer to a great career. So sometimes working harder isn't what's going to get you where you need to go. You need to work smarter, and you need to think about how to use the systems and all of the tools and staff at your fingertips to really maximize getting the right work done so that you can be the great lawyer you want to do, to run the practice that you want to run, have that profitable business or participate in the profitable business, and then also do the stuff you want to do outside of work without running yourself into the ground, right?
Yes. So you said a lot of great things there. And I want to kind of segue a little bit here and shift, because one thing, kind of what you said there of like, balancing things, prioritization, maybe even delegation, if I'm kind of putting that in there, right, is one thing that I constantly hear from lawyers is, sure, that's great, but no matter what plan I make, unexpected things still come up. There's court dates that are shifting all the time, right? Client calls that I need to take on my cell phone, any kind of emergency, plans get blown up. So how do I handle unexpected things and everything else that's already happening?
Yeah, that's the reality for many, many of my clients. And what I say is this, you know you're going to get interrupted, right? It's not a surprise. You know something is going to happen, whether it's, co-counsel or it's a high-valued client or the court, something's going to shift, right? Wild cards are going to happen. And so what I want you to do is to start to notice what your wild cards are, right? What are the things that cause you to shift, that interrupt you, that feel like push you into pants on fire mode, right? Where all of a sudden you're just reacting and responding. You're not necessarily doing the things that you feel is the highest priority, but you feel like you've been pulled sideways, right? So you want to first notice what is it that pulls you sideways, label those as wild cards, and then start to track them over a couple of weeks. And once you do this, you're going to get a sense about what the real wild cards are, because when I do this with my clients, Eric, what I find is they know some of the wild cards going in, but they always, once they've done the real research and collected the data over a couple of weeks, there's some other wild cards in there that they can actually control in a different way. And that's where it gets to setting up those systems that work for their brain, their body, their life, and their business to communicate with those people that feel like wild cards, right? So it might be, wow, my team needs me more than I anticipated, and they're really interrupting me a lot. So I'm not getting into that deep dive thinking place that I need to get to actually do some of the legal work, do a lot of the legal work. So let me set up a regular communication time with my team so they know when they can get me and I know when I'm going to get them, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't feel like they have to knock on my door or give me a text or a Slack every 10 seconds, right? So tracking the wild cards is really important. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get a sense about how much time in each day goes to wild cards. Let's say it's 90 minutes. Then when you put together your plan for your day, you're going to leave 90 minutes that's going to say wild card in it, okay? And you're going to book it out in your calendar so that you know you're holding that space, your team knows you're holding that space, and that's where that urgent and important work is going to get done that you didn't know the day before needs to get done, right? So now the next thing that comes up with everybody is, Sarah, I don't have 90 minutes I can leave open in my day. What are you talking about?
Seems like a lot of time.
Right? That is crazy talk. Yeah. So here's the thing. You're wedging it in now. You're just wedging it in a way that feels really uncomfortable to you. So you're doing the work anyway, and you're going to reclaim some of that time because when you look at what the wild cards are, some of that, as I said, is controllable. You can say, oh, we have this office system that really causes me to check my calendar more than I need to because things get miscalendared, right? So fix that. Or people are interrupting me so much that it takes me 2 times as long to do the work that I could do if I wasn't interrupted. Well, guess what? You're going to regain that because you're not going to be interrupted. So you're going to get some open time. So there's lots of little tiny shifts that people can make that regain a lot of time in their day and then allows them to use that for the wild cards. And when I work more closely with people, Eric, this is the nitty-gritty that we get into. The examples I've given are ones that probably are resonating with people that are listening, mm-hmm. The team that's interrupting, or, I actually had one lawyer who works for a large corporation. He couldn't even navigate his own calendar because there was so much stuff on there. It didn't make sense to him. Automatically added to all of these different matters just because his name was on the file, even if he wasn't the one needing to attend the meeting. Yeah. So he couldn't figure out which meetings were important and what his day looked like. What a time robber right there. So making sure that you track the wild cards, set aside some time for it, and then notice where you can reclaim some time because you were getting pulled sideways so often and wasting time in that process.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think that's going to ring true with so many listeners, so many people that are hearing this or watching this. And I like how you gave almost the very soft name, the wild card, right? Kind of giving something a name or giving it a label, I think is the first step into fixing it, right? Instead of like, oh, this and that is happening. It's like, no, these are the wild cards. And then I'm a huge fan of calendar blocking as well. And then just kind of like finding that time for that wild card, to your point, I think is such a game changer for people because for me, for personally, like a couple years ago, I started just simply writing down what am I doing all day? What is even happening? And that was such a game changer for me that even to this day, sometimes when I feel like I'm just treading water and I don't know where I'm going, is I always start again. Let's write down what's actually happening every day. What are you doing? How much energy? And then for me personally, I know it's a little bit different, but I look at my energy. How much energy is this costing me, right? Do I really want to be doing this? Do I enjoy doing this, right? So I kind of write my notes, no judgment. A week later, I look at it and I go through and I start seeing a pattern. To your point, you discover these patterns. And once you see a pattern, you can plan around that pattern. So I think that makes so much sense, and so those are great examples of people interrupting or just getting added to meetings, right? The dreaded, like this meeting could have been an email, right? It's reality, right? It happens so often. So I couldn't agree more. So these blocks that you're saying they should schedule there, how rigid should that be? Because you want to still have flexibility in the structure in your schedule, right? But you don't want to lose structure. So I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts are on being flexible, but also, wanting to be structured at the same time.
Yeah, so when I work more closely with people, I teach a system that I call a flexible template for your week. And I specifically call it a flexible template because I've worked with so many clients over the years that have tried time blocking. And what happens sometimes when we do time blocking is that we make a really pretty picture that's color coded in our calendar and it's completely unrealistic, right?
Yep.
So it looks like it's going to work, but then when we get to doing it, it actually doesn't work. And the second we're off track, it all goes out the window and then we're just in pants on fire mode, right? And we're just doing whatever is showing up either in our email or on our text feed or walking in the door or ringing on the phone, right? And that is not a really clear and productive way to run your day. You're going to lose a lot of time and energy with that quick task switching, which causes a lot of energy loss.
Mm-hmm.
And with the time blocking, again, you want to give yourself that flexibility so that you have some wiggle room. And that's where that 90, well, let's say it's an hour block that you need for wildcards or calls that you just need to respond to that are going to be urgent and important, right? So hold that space open. And then if you need to click and drag things through the day, you can click and drag things and move them around, but don't blow yourself off, right? So my guideline for putting something in your calendar as a work block is you need to put it in a realistic time that you think you're going to get to it, that makes sense for your energy, right? So if your energy is best in the morning and that's when you do your deep dive thinking, put a clear block in for that, or the writing that needs to get done in the morning. But if you're better at that in the afternoon, then hold the afternoon for that. So that's what you were talking about in terms of matching your energy with activity, right? Yes. So there's your energy and time of day. And so you want to sort of get a sense about that, match it up as much as you can, but also give yourself the grace to click and drag things around, move things around to optimize them given the day for how you feel like you're going to operate best, not around who's yelling the loudest or who happens to knock the loudest on your door, right? Yeah.
That's a pattern you want to get out as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. So you want to really notice when you're responding because there's a beep or a buzz or a knock or a yell, as opposed to, is this thing meaningful and important and really related to the substantive work that I want to get done today? Sometimes it is, lots of times it's not. And that's how you're going to reclaim some time also. You're going to stop responding immediately, which again uses so much mental resources, right? It just uses up your brain power during the day. That's how you end up being busy all day long and exhausted at the end of the day and knowing that you haven't done anything, right? Or feeling that you haven't done anything important.
Love it. So many great examples there. But I just want to see if I can pull any more out of you, Dr. Sarah here. This is great. I just love getting tactical here. So I'm wondering if you have any other maybe some insights for the listeners here, maybe something small but high impactful, maybe a shift that a lawyer can make today to regain some of that control over their time.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to that flexible template concept. We've talked about planning for wildcards, which is one piece. The other piece that people are often not very conscious about planning for is when they want to start working and when they want to stop working at the end of the day. Right? And this is where we end up kind of sort of working, kind of sort of not working, kind of sort of working on client work, kind of sort of doing marketing, kind of sort of doing business development, kind of sort of not doing anything really well, and then feeling exhausted at the end of the day. So the first barrier or boundary there is, when am I going to start my work day? And then the second boundary is, when am I going to end my work day? And just starting to practice that over a couple of weeks and asking yourself throughout the day, am I working or am I not working? Right? So how does that play out? Well, I think I'm going to be at my office at 9 in the morning. Oh, I actually get there at 9:20. Why? Because I stopped at Starbucks and it took me a little bit longer, right? Or traffic, whatever your wild card, right? Another wild card.
Yep, there you
Whatever
go.
pulls you sideways in that morning, right? And then as you sit down and you think, oh, let me check the news feed first, right? Or let me check the email first. Are you working or are you not working, right?
Not working, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Is news important to what you're doing? Is email important to what you're doing? Right? So you want to start to ask yourself throughout the day, am I working? Am I not working? And if you're somebody who gets stuck in the news scroll, the social media scroll, the email scroll, you want to ask yourself, when you're doing those things, how is this related to what I want to get accomplished right now? All right. It's going to help you shut down some of the distractions. That's another place where you're going to reclaim some of that time during your day to do more substantive work, and also to handle those wild cards in a more mindfully focused kind of way. So the flexible template, again, starts with when you're working and when you're not working. And then you want to go to, what are the must-do work activities, right? What are the must-do home activities? And what are the must-do fun activities? And yes, I said must-do fun. You have to put the fun in your week, know when it's going to happen. Otherwise, it ends up taking you sideways. It might be a wild card, and then it feels like a guilty pleasure, and you don't get actually refueled the way you need to do your job and be present in the rest of your life. So those are really important things you can start to build in over time. But the first place to start with is, am I working? Am I not working? Because you're going to reclaim so much time by asking yourself that question, and by just taking that brief pause to say, whoa, wait, what am I doing right now?
I love that. Yeah. So even just kind of the having the awareness in the moment, right? And kind of thinking about, based on what your goals are, what you're doing, I think is so powerful. Those daily anchors, I think, are invaluable.
And Eric, it gets back to what you were saying about the time tracking. So time tracking with lawyers is a really loaded concept, right? Because a lot of them have to track their time for their billable hours. And what I know is that you want to be tracking your time, not just for billable hours, but for what you're actually doing. And is it having the impact you want it to have in your life? Because time is a non-renewable resource.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're shifting even, let's say, an hour a day from something that's not so important to something that's more important and meaningful to you, related to your personal or professional goals, then that really adds up over time. So 1 hour a day over 365 days, let's just do some easy math, right? Over a year is 365 hours. That's more than 9 40-hour work weeks.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
So even if you're reclaiming half of that, that's a big chunk of time that you can repurpose for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love doing this work with lawyers, because that work can go to something that's going to pay them back personally or professionally in a way that they can't even imagine right now.
I love that. I have one final question before we get into your closing checklist here. And that's, do you have any favorite tools or strategies for creating kind of that focus or consistent focus?
Yeah, so one is having that flexible template or plan for your week so that you've thought about it ahead of time, right? And you've thought very purposefully about what are the priorities, what are the things I want to complete this week, and what is the time map that I've put together to make sure that that's going to happen. So often my clients, and we all do this, right? So I'm not exempting myself by any means. You think I want to get that thing done by the end of the week, but you don't actually then put together the pieces in your week, the puzzle pieces that actually prove to you that you're going to get it done, right? Or you just kind of chuck it in there and you don't hold yourself accountable, or you get pulled sideways by something else, and then you start to not trust yourself about that plan, right? So the flexible template is that sort of, it's not a one and done thing. You want to keep testing, if I do it this way, does that work for me? So super powerful tool.
I love it. I was kind of smirking there because it sounded like very much like my college experience. It's like, okay, got to get this by Friday. Don't put in any time. Then you do an all-nighter on Thursday to get it done on Friday. Right. And that's not what you want to do.
Right, but too often that is the habit that people get into. Yeah. And it works for a while until it doesn't work. And then you're burnt out and exhausted. And then you need to develop some other skills. So I talk with a lot of lawyers that do pull all-nighters or do, go into that hyper-focus mode, and it doesn't work for them anymore. And they need to figure out how to do things differently. It is possible. You have to practice it, though, as much as you've practiced the pull the all-nighter move, right? Yep.
Yeah, it only lasts so long. And it's been a while since college, and college was much easier. Nowadays, I don't think I could do that anymore.
Yeah. It is harder to do as you get older and more mature. Absolutely.
I love it. Awesome. So let's get into your closing checklist here. 5 ways lawyers can take back their time. So I always like to leave the audience with some great takeaways. This was a fantastic episode. Just want to kind of bring it all together here by going through these 5 ways here that lawyers can take their time back. So you have a 5-part framework for getting control of your time without adding more stress. I'll kind of read them off and then you can take it from there, Dr. Sarah, okay?
Sounds great.
So do number 1, plan weekly and daily, right?
Yeah, so we've talked about the flexible template, and then what you want to do once you have that plan for the week is check in each day and say, what is shifting, right? This is the flexible piece. You're going to need to click and drag stuff. Some of the lawyers I work with need to click and drag stuff at noon after they've planned in the morning, right? So it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. You just want to acknowledge that you have a fast-moving business if you do, and you're going to need to move things around. And also just acknowledge that plans help us set up for success and life happens. So that's why you want to check in daily and make sure that the plan you set up is still going to work. Better to change it and set yourself up for success each day than to feel like you're always running crazy.
I love this. And I couldn't agree more. You gotta look big picture, but then also be, to your point, be flexible, agile on a daily basis because stuff happens. So really love that kind of way of looking at it. It's great. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 is build in buffer time.
Yes. So often we go from meeting to meeting to meeting. And that means we're not adequately prepared for meetings sometimes. Or we're prepared, we get to the meeting, but then we don't do whatever follow-up we need to do from the meeting, right? So you want to notice that any activity that you do has actually 3 phases: preparation, doing, and follow-up, right? Works for brushing your teeth or writing a brief or going to a meeting. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself that buffer space to do whichever one of those phases you forget to plan for, right? Some of us forget to plan for the preparation. Some of us forget to plan for the follow-up, right? And so the meeting becomes less effective. So just give yourself the space to be adequately prepared for stuff and then also to do some good follow-up if you need it.
I love that. I think that's so important and so often overlooked, even for me personally. It's like a game changer. We're like, oh, I have 8 hours. I can do 8 back-to-back meetings. And then like, oh crap, I didn't have time to get back to anyone, or I came into these meetings, I didn't know what was going on. So I think that's so valuable to come into a meeting prepared and then also follow up. So I think that's fantastic. Moving to number 3, use anchor tasks.
Yes, so that gets back to the flexible template, right? In terms of what are your goals for the week? What are the things you want to complete? And then also what's the fund of activities that you have to get done during the week, right? And what works best for you on given days or given time of day? So if you have that flexible template where things are kind of mapped out for you or mapped out in general, and then in a given week you can click and drag. So it might look like Monday morning, I like to do a deep dive and make sure that I'm doing some writing because I'm refreshed and that's a good time for me to do it. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to also do some writing, but I know I need to do my bookkeeping, right? Or I need to be reporting hours, or I need to check in on this particular business development sort of activity, right? And so give yourself specific days and times that you're doing specific activities so that you don't have to keep planning and asking yourself all day long, every day, when am I going to do that thing, right? It shuts down a lot of that questioning. And so you can do your planning when you're fresh and you're ready to do the planning. And then you can just follow the time map the rest of the time and not exhaust your brain.
I love that. It makes so much sense. Again, just know yourself, know, what works for you when, and then just create those anchor tasks around there. So inspirational. My wheels are already turning about what my takeaways are here. So I love this. So number 4, create predictable focus blocks.
Yes. So that is one of the sorts of anchor activities that you want to have, where you're going to be focused on particular projects or activities that need to get done. So for instance, for a long time in my practice, I tend to see clients Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? And so Tuesday is a day that I try and hold for deep dive work that isn't working with clients. All right. So it might be developing a new curriculum for a new group program that I'm doing, or it might be really thinking through the marketing plan for my business for the next 6 months. Right. But I give myself that 2 or 3 hour block, and it's held, and it says in my calendar, it says development. And then each week, as I know what I'm doing during that time, usually the previous week, I'll fill in, right? I'll take out the word development and I'll put, finish XYZ project or work on ABC. So I'm giving myself breadcrumbs to follow on Tuesday. I don't have to go, oh, what is the thing I need to be doing? Yeah. I know. I did it the previous week when I did my planning for that week. And I was proactive about, Sarah, don't forget to do this thing because you want to get it done now so you're not pushing to do it later. Make sense?
Absolutely. Love that so much. Makes, again, fantastic. So we're going to move on to number 5 of the checklist here. Last but not least, define success realistically.
So we often hear about successful people and they look like they're all doing it alone. And what I can guarantee you is if you pull back the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz, he wasn't alone, right? Matter of fact, he wasn't even real. So make sure that when you see somebody that's successful and you think they're doing it on their own, if you're trying to mimic that, ask them what other support do they have behind the scenes so that you could really understand the whole picture. And what I can guarantee is they have some clear support. You're just not seeing it. And success never, ever happens in a vacuum. It always happens because we have other people that are supporting us. And honestly, you can't do it alone. In the legal business these days, you need to have people that are helping you, whether it's on the admin side or whether it's, in terms of having associates or other coworkers that you're working with. And there's lots of ways that you can even start to bring in electronic systems that are supporting you and saving you time as well. So if you're a solopreneur and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't delegate, I don't have other people to help with me, there's ways to solve that until you're ready to hire people. And you can bring in people at small increments of time that make a big difference for you so that you can really be growing your practice. So there's lots and lots of ways to do that. Success never happens alone. Make sure that you are targeting a model that's realistic and realistic for you and how you want to live your whole life.
Love that. That makes so much sense, right? And kind of figuring out how you can get those support systems in place, I think is so important, especially early on, I think, kind of planning out for that. So I love that. So fantastic closing checklist here, Dr. Sarah. And I want to just thank you so much for bringing clarity to a topic that stresses out so many attorneys, so many people in general, and for helping professionals understand that true productivity is about really your behavior, not burnout. And I think that the Kim Crawford Illuminate Sauvignon Blanc that you're pairing here is perfect, right? It really fits the conversation about clarity, and it cuts through the heavy stuff without weighing down your schedule there. But before we wrap up, I think, you had so many great things to say. I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to connect with you out there. Where can listeners connect with you, learn more about your True Focus coaching, and access your time management resources?
So my website is truefocuscoaching.com. And if you're interested in talking with me more about if and how I can help you, you can apply for a strategy session. And that link is truefocuscoaching.com/apply/. And it takes about 2 minutes. We just want to know a little bit about you so that I can prepare for the meeting. And that meeting is no cost and is really about me using my brain to help you figure out what is a strategy that's going to help support you to manage your time and activities in a way that works for you so you can create that whole business and whole life that you want. If you want to talk about my services, I'm happy to do that. And it is an hour where we get to really dive deeply, the two of us. Again, it's truefocuscoaching.com. And also at truefocuscoaching.com, you'll see a resources tab. There's lots of my blogs, free recordings of podcasts I've been on, all of those kinds of things. So if you want to hear more about what I have to say about things, there's lots of great free resources there as well.
Amazing. I can't recommend it enough. This might have been the best episode yet, Dr. Sarah. Really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for being on, sharing your expertise. Really encourage everyone to go check out the website. The links will be in the show notes as well. And for our listeners, watchers out there, if you're ready to grow your firm with system, structure, and smarter strategy, you can also book a discovery session with me to go through the Motion for Marketing system, where we can discover together how to get you more leads for higher paying retainers and bigger cases. And that link will be in the show notes as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a colleague and leave us a review. It helps more firms learn that strategies that actually work. And Dr. Sarah, thank you again so much for joining today.
Thanks so much for having me, Eric. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Until next time, plan smarter, breathe deeper, and keep building a practice you love. Cheers.